The massive starship emerged from the darkness like a predator rising from the depths. Its crystalline hull reflected the light of 3 suns, creating prismatic patterns across the peaceful world below. First Officer Kex of the Surveillance Outpost Beacon 7 watched through reinforced windows as the vessel's weapon ports slowly opened, revealing something he had never seen before. "Energy signatures are off the charts," his assistant chirped, mandibles clicking rapidly. "But it's not plasma-based. The readings suggest water." Kex's peripheral eyes narrowed while his main vision cluster remained fixed on the scene unfolding before them. The Zexithrax fleet had attacked dozens of worlds, but they had never deployed anything like this. The weapon ports began to glow with an ethereal blue light. "Send the evacuation signal," Kex ordered, but he already knew it was too late. The first shot struck a metropolitan center 2,000 kilometers from the outpost. Instead of an explosion, a ripple of blue liquid spread across the landscape like spilled paint. Through his magnification filters, Kex watched in horror as the modified heavy water broke down everything it touched. Trees, buildings, and living beings alike dissolved into the advancing tide. "It's not destroying them," the science officer reported, her voice trembling as she analyzed the readings. "The molecular structure of organic matter is being altered, suspended in the liquid matrix. They're turning our world into a solution." Kex activated the emergency beacon, broadcasting on all frequencies. His message was brief. "The Zexithrax fleet has developed weapons that weaponize water itself. Our defenses are useless. To anyone who receives this, stay away from the blue tide." The outpost's communications array lit up with responses from nearby systems. Questions, offers of help, expressions of disbelief. But Kex kept his eyes on the screens showing the spread of the liquid weapon. Centuries of civilization disappeared beneath its advance, transformed into an ever-growing ocean that reflected the 3 suns overhead. "Sir," his assistant interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the Zexithrax vessel." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the segmented face of Admiral Vexthar. The Zexithrax commander's expression was unreadable, but satisfaction dripped from every word. "Your world now belongs to the solution. Soon, all worlds will flow as one under our guidance. Resistance is—" He paused, mandibles twitching in what passed for amusement among his kind, "soluble." The transmission cut off. Kex watched as more streams of modified water arsed from the ship, creating new impact points across the continent. His homeworld was being transformed into something alien, one drop at a time. "Begin emergency protocols," he ordered, activating the outpost's shields. "Download all sensor data and prepare the quantum burst transmitter. The galaxy needs to know what they're facing." As his crew rushed to comply, Kex allowed himself one moment of grief for his world. The blue tide had already reached the base of their mountain refuge. Soon, the outpost would become an island in a sea of transformed matter. But they had a duty to warn others, to give them a chance to find a defense against this new weapon. "Quantum burst ready," the communications officer reported. "Send it," Kex commanded. "Send everything we've learned. Someone out there must be able to stop this." The burst went out, carrying their warning across the stars. As the blue tide began to climb the mountain, Kex wondered if any species in the galaxy could stand against a weapon that turned the very essence of life, water itself, into an instrument of conquest. The answer would come from an unexpected direction. But by then, dozens more worlds would fall to the strange blue tide that dissolved everything it touched. Everything, that is, except for a species that had not yet reached the stars. A species that had spent millions of years learning to drink almost anything. The Stellar Pioneer dropped out of its first faster-than-light jump with a ripple of displaced space-time. Captain Elena Martinez steadied herself against the bridge railing as reality reasserted itself around the ship. Through the forward viewport, the Galactic Concordat station hung like a jeweled pendant against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. "First jump successful," Lieutenant Rodriguez announced from the navigation station. trying to keep his voice professional despite the excitement. All systems nominal. We made it, Captain. Alina allowed herself a small smile. Humanity's first FTL vessel had just made history, crossing 20 light-years in less than an hour. The celebration would have to wait, though. They had a first contact situation to handle. Opening hailing frequencies, Communications Officer Chen reported, broadcasting the first contact package as planned. The bridge crew held their breath as they waited for a response. Decades of research, preparation, and technological development had led to this moment. The response, when it came, was not what anyone had expected. Instead of a formal greeting, the station's speakers erupted with blaring alarms. Red warning lights flashed across the crystalline structure's surface, and ships of various designs began pouring from its docking bays in what was clearly an evacuation. Multiple ships approaching our position, Security Chief Wong reported, but they're not moving to intercept. They're running away. Alina watched as elegant vessels streamed past the Stellar Pioneer, their crews too focused on escape to pay attention to the unfamiliar human ship. The station's warning lights painted the bridge in crimson pulses. We're receiving a broadcast, Chen announced. Universal Translation Matrix is processing. It's a warning to all ships. They're saying. He paused, double-checking the translation. They're saying, the blue tide comes. Before Alina could respond, a new ship appeared at the edge of their sensor range. Its crystalline hull caught the light of nearby stars, and familiar-looking weapon ports lined its sides. Match that configuration against the first contact briefing package, Alina ordered, her mind racing. Something about this feels. Found it. Rodriguez interrupted. The ship matches warnings we received in our first radio contact with the Galactic Conquerors. It's a Zexathrax vessel, designated as extremely dangerous. They're the ones using the water weapons we were briefed about. The station's admiral finally seemed to notice the human vessel. A holographic projection appeared on the bridge, showing an elegant being with iridescent scales and compound eyes. Unknown vessel, you must evacuate immediately. The admiral insisted. You have no concept of the danger. The hydro cannons will break down organic matter on contact by modifying the molecular structure of heavy water, creating a suspension of transformed biological material. Alina finished, recalling the briefing. Yes, we received your warnings in our first radio communications. That's partly why we're here. The admiral's compound eyes flickered in what might have been surprise. Then you understand you must flee. No known defense exists against. A brilliant blue stream erupted from the Zexathrax ship, cutting off the admiral's warning. The liquid weapon arced through space directly toward the Stellar Pioneer. Evasive maneuvers, Wong suggested, hands hovering over the controls. Alina stood straighter, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. No, hold position. Chief Science Officer Taylor, deploy the collection arrays. Let's show our new friends why humans spent so long playing with water. The bridge crew watched through the viewport as the blue stream approached. The admiral's hologram buzzed with static as he tried to warn them again, but Alina's attention was focused on the incoming liquid. Humanity's first real test in galactic society was about to begin, and it would start with a drink. The blue stream struck the Stellar Pioneer's hull with enough force to make the entire ship shudder. Lieutenant James Chen watched through the observation deck's reinforced windows as rivulets of modified heavy water ran down the transparent material. The liquid caught the starlight, shimmering with an otherworldly glow that would have been beautiful if it wasn't meant to be lethal. Initial analysis coming in, he reported, checking his tablet's readings. Deuterium levels are fascinating. The molecular structure has been altered too. He paused as a drop of the liquid worked its way through a microscopic crack in the window seal, landing on his hand. The observation deck erupted in panic. 3 alien diplomats who had been too slow to evacuate scrambled backward, their various appendages shaking in terror. Even the ship's security team took an instinctive step away. But Chen didn't dissolve. He didn't even feel uncomfortable. Instead, he raised his hand closer to his face, studying the drop with scientific curiosity. The liquid beaded on his skin, just like any other water, though it felt slightly heavier than normal. "Lieutenant Chen." Security Chief Wong's voice crackled through the intercom. "Do not move. Decontamination teams are en route to your position." Chen barely heard her. His mind was racing through chemical equations and evolutionary biology. Humans had spent millions of years drinking everything from mineral-heavy spring water to barely filtered river water. Their digestive systems had evolved to handle an incredible variety of H2O-based liquids. "Hold that decontamination team," he said, making a decision that would change galactic history. Before anyone could stop him, he lifted his hand to his mouth and tasted the drop. The alien diplomats made sounds that might have been screams. The security team started forward, but Chen was already typing notes into his tablet with his free hand. "Definitely heavy water-based," he commented, running his tongue over his teeth. "The molecular modification is clever. It's designed to aggressively bond with organic matter. But the base liquid," he paused, considering, "reminds me of samples we collected from deep-sea thermal vents. Similar mineral profile, though the isotope ratio is quite different." Through the windows, he could see the Zexathrax ship hanging motionless in space. Their sensors must have been going haywire, trying to process why their ultimate weapon wasn't reducing him to his component molecules. "Lieutenant," Captain Martinez's voice cut through the chaos, remarkably calm. "Are you certain you're unaffected?" Chen checked his vital signs on his tablet. "Completely fine, Captain." In fact, he walked to where more of the liquid was dripping through the seal. "I suggest we collect as many samples as possible. This could revolutionize our understanding of heavy water applications." He caught another drop, ignoring the horrified gasps from their alien guests. "The taste is actually cleaner than some mineral waters I've had. Though I wouldn't recommend it for regular consumption. The deuterium levels alone would make it rather expensive to produce in bulk." The security team's shoulders began to relax as it became clear Chen wasn't going to dissolve. One of the alien diplomats, a tall being with crystalline features, stepped forward cautiously. "Impossible," they whispered in the trading language. "We have seen entire worlds fall to the blue tide. How can you simply drink it?" Chen smiled, already composing research notes in his head. "My ancestors survived by learning to drink from almost any water source they could find. Desert springs, mountain streams, volcanic pools, each with their own unique mineral content and chemical composition. Compared to some of Earth's natural water sources, this is fairly straightforward." He caught another drop on his tablet's sensor pad. "Though I have to say, targeting the hydrogen bonds to create a suspension matrix for organic matter is quite innovative. Our biochemists will be fascinated." He looked up at the stunned faces around him. "I don't suppose the Zexathrax would be willing to share their research notes." Above them, the Zexathrax ship began to retreat, its weapons powering down. They had just discovered that their ultimate weapon wasn't just useless against humans. It was refreshing. Dr. Maya Singh stood before the holographic display in Earth's Deep Ocean Research Center, watching as simulated molecules danced through the projection. Behind her, representatives from 50 countries and 3 alien species waited in tense silence. "The genius of the weapon," she explained, zooming in on a particular molecular cluster, is also its weakness. "Look at how the modified heavy water creates a suspension matrix for organic matter." The hologram shifted, showing a time-lapse of the liquid's interaction with different materials. A leaf dissolved into the solution, its molecular structure clearly visible within the suspended state. "But it's not destruction," Maya continued, her eyes bright with discovery. "It's more like extremely aggressive pickling. The organic matter remains intact at a molecular level, just suspended in a solution that no known species can process." She paused, allowing herself a small smile. "No known species, except us." The gathered audience leaned forward as she brought up new data streams. Humans evolved drinking some of the most complex water sources in known space. Our world's geological history created unique combinations of minerals, heavy metals, and organic compounds in our water supply. Images flashed across the display: ancient wells, mineral springs, glacial streams, and deep-sea vents. Our ancestors survived by learning to drink from whatever sources they could find. Those who could process complex water survived. Those who couldn't, didn't. A Conquerors scientist raised a crystalline appendage. But surely other species evolved with similar challenges. Maya shook her head, bringing up a comparison chart. Not quite like Earth. Our planet's constant geological activity, combined with the evolution of diverse microbial life, created water sources that would be considered toxic by most galactic standards. We didn't just adapt to drink water. We adapted to drink almost anything water-based. She gestured to a new simulation showing the human digestive system. Our bodies developed multiple redundant systems for processing complex water molecules. We can handle variations in isotope ratios that would poison most species. More importantly, we can separate suspended organic matter from water solutions. The hologram zoomed in on a cellular-level view. When Lieutenant Chen drank the weapon, his body automatically began breaking down the suspension matrix. If we can scale up this process, we could restore the victims, the Conquerors scientist finished, their crystalline form vibrating with excitement. Maya nodded. Exactly. We've already successfully extracted intact organic matter from samples of the weapon. The suspended material is perfectly preserved, just waiting to be filtered out and reactivated. She brought up one final display showing a prototype filtration system. By replicating the human body's natural processes on an industrial scale, we can process large quantities of the modified water. Early tests suggest we can extract up to 98% of suspended organic matter. The room erupted in excited discussion. Maya watched as alien scientists huddled with human engineers, already starting to work out implementation details. But her attention was drawn to a message blinking on her private display. Dr. Singh, it read, preliminary results from Deep Ocean Test Site Beta. You need to see this immediately. She slipped away from the presentation, making her way to a secure communication room. The video feed showed a research submersible near a thermal vent, where they had been testing processing methods. We found something interesting in the vent water, the submarine's science officer reported. The mineral composition is nearly identical to the Zexathrax weapon, minus the heavy water modifications. We think they might have copied the formula from somewhere. These vents might be where the weapon's original design came from. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. The Zexathrax hadn't invented their weapon. They had discovered it. Somewhere in their past, they had found the formula in deep-sea vents like Earth's. But while they saw it as a weapon, humanity had spent millions of years learning to drink from similar sources. She looked back at the conference room, where humans and aliens worked together to solve the crisis. Sometimes, she realized, the greatest discoveries come from simply surviving what others fear. Earth's primitive history had prepared humanity for exactly this moment. They just hadn't known it until now. Dr. Sarah Wong stood in the massive hangar of the converted aircraft carrier Pacific Solution, watching as engineers installed the final pieces of her design. The filtration system towered 3 stories high, its transparent pipes glowing with a soft blue light that reminded her of bioluminescent algae. The processing capacity is remarkable, she explained to Admiral Chen, who had come to witness the final tests. Each unit can filter 10,000 liters per minute, separating the suspended organic matter while purifying the heavy water for safe disposal. The Admiral nodded, his eyes tracking the movement of technicians across the scaffolding. And the organic extraction success rate. Sarah pulled up the latest test results on her tablet. 99.4% with the new catalytic membrane design. We based it on the way human kidneys process complex solutions, but scaled up and optimized. Above them, the final connection clicked into place with a sound that echoed through the hangar. The entire system hummed to life, pumping ordinary seawater through its chambers in a test cycle. "Beautiful," Sarah whispered, watching the liquid flow through the transparent sections. Each chamber replicated a different aspect of human biological filtration, working together in perfect harmony. Dr. Wong, a young technician, rushed up, tablet in hand. "We're receiving a priority message from the Conquerors Defense Fleet. The Zexathrax are attacking the Centauri colonies. They're requesting immediate assistance." Sarah exchanged glances with the Admiral. The system had passed all its tests, but they hadn't planned to deploy for another week. The Admiral's expression hardened with determination. "How fast can you be ready?" he asked. Sarah was already moving, calling out orders through her comm unit. 20 minutes to full operation. We'll need another 10 to load the collection tanks. After that, she allowed herself a small smile. We can start drinking their weapons. The next half hour passed in a blur of activity. The Pacific Solutions engines roared to life as the massive vessel moved out to sea. Sarah watched from the control room as her team made final adjustments to the filtration system. "All stations report ready," her assistant announced. "Filtration systems online. Collection tanks sealed. Medical teams standing by." Sarah took a deep breath, remembering the first time she'd seen the hydro weapons in action. The horror of watching living beings dissolved into suspension had driven her team to work countless hours, pushing the boundaries of bioengineering. "Start the jump sequence," the Admiral ordered. The Pacific Solutions experimental faster-than-light drive engage, wrapping the massive ship in a field of distorted spacetime. Sarah felt the familiar disorientation as they jumped, emerging moments later in the Centauri system. The scene that greeted them was chaos. 3 Zexathrax ships hung in high orbit, their hydrocannons firing continuous streams at the colonies below. The surface of the largest settlement was already half covered in the telltale blue liquid. "They haven't noticed us yet," the tactical officer reported. "We have incoming transmissions from the surface. Life signs are still strong in the suspended areas." Sarah stepped up to the main console, entering commands into the filtration control system. "Position us directly under their firing arc. Let's show them what happens when you bring water to a species that evolved drinking from Earth's oceans." The Pacific Solution moved into position, its massive filtration arrays extending like great crystalline wings. As the Zexathrax ships adjusted their aim, Sarah thought about the irony of the situation. Humanity had spent its entire history adapting to survive Earth's challenging waters. Now those same adaptations would help them save other species. "Incoming hydrocannon fire," Tactical announced. Sarah watched the blue stream approach on the main screen. "Activate primary filtration sequence. Let's go save some worlds." The first drops of weaponized water hit the filtration arrays, and Project Blue Dawn officially began. Humanity's greatest survival adaptation was about to become the galaxy's best defense against extinction. The bridge of the Earth ship-breaking wave thrummed with energy as Captain Michael Chen watched the Zexathrax fleet approach. His vessel, smaller than the Pacific Solution but more maneuverable, led a squadron of 5 ships equipped with the latest filtration technology. Multiple hydrocannon signatures warming up, Lieutenant Park reported from Tactical. "They're preparing to fire." Michael nodded, keeping his expression calm despite the tension coursing through his body. "Status of filtration systems. All arrays operating at peak efficiency," Chief Engineer Rodriguez responded. "Collection tanks are empty and ready. The new mobile processing units are online." The first blue stream of weaponized water arced through space toward them. Michael watched it approach, remembering all the simulations they'd run. But this was different. This was real. "Steady as she goes," he ordered. "Let them think they have us." The hydrocannon's payload struck breaking wave's hull dead center. Instead of the expected dissolution, the liquid began flowing through specialized channels built into the ship's surface. Michael allowed himself a small smile as the tactical display showed the Zexathrax ships pausing in apparent confusion. "First batch processing now," Rodriguez announced. "Filtration arrays are performing perfectly. organic matter separation at 99.8% efficiency. Through the main viewport, Michael could see the other ships in his squadron moving into position. Each vessel was designed to handle a different aspect of the rescue operation, some focusing on collection, others on processing, and some on storage of the recovered organic matter. "Sir," Communications Officer John cut in, "we're receiving a transmission from the Zexthrax flagship." "Put it through." The segmented face of the Zexthrax commander appeared on the main screen. "Your resistance is futile. Our weapons will." "Actually," Michael interrupted, keeping his tone conversational, "I should thank you for the refreshments. The mineral content is fascinating. Though I suggest reducing the deuterium ratio by about 0.3%, it would make the whole thing much more efficient." The commander's mandibles twitched in what might have been confusion. "You dare mock our ultimate weapon?" "Not at all. We're simply processing it." In fact, Michael gestured to Rodriguez, who nodded and activated a secondary display. It showed the filtered organic matter being extracted from the first batch, ready for restoration. "We're finding it quite useful." The Zexthrax commander's compound eyes flickered rapidly as they processed what they were seeing. On the tactical display, more hydrocannons began charging up. "All ships," Michael broadcast to his squadron, "initiate pattern Delta. Let's show them what we can do." The human vessels moved in perfect coordination, creating a web of collection arrays as the Zexthrax opened fire with every weapon they had. Blue streams crisscrossed space, but instead of destruction, they only fed the increasingly efficient filtration network. "Collection tanks at 40%, Rodriguez reported, processing speed increasing as the systems adapt to the specific molecular structure. Michael watched as his squadron transformed what should have been a devastating attack into a sophisticated rescue operation. Each ship's filtration arrays glowed brighter as they processed more of the weaponized water, breaking it down into its component parts. "Sir," Park called out, excitement creeping into her voice, "the Zexthrax ships are retreating. They're powering down their weapons. Send a message to Fleet Command," Michael ordered. "Operation successful. Request additional collection vessels for recovered organic matter." He paused, looking at the readings from the processing tanks. "And tell them we're going to need more storage space. We had a lot of people to restore." As the Zexthrax fleet disappeared into faster-than-light travel, Michael reflected on how far they'd come. What started with Lieutenant Chen taking a curious sip of a weapon had transformed into humanity's greatest contribution to galactic peace. "Begin rescue operations," he ordered. "Let's show the galaxy that Earth's greatest survival trait isn't just drinking strange water, it's using that ability to help others." The Breaking Wave and her sister ships moved into position above the affected planet, their filtration arrays gleaming like beacons of hope against the darkness of space. The first major test of Project Blue Dawn had succeeded, and with it, the tide of war had finally begun to turn. Dr. Maya Singh stood before the restoration chamber, her heart racing, as she checked the readings one final time. The cylindrical pod hummed softly, its transparent walls revealing the swirling mixture within. Behind her, representatives from 20 species waited in hushed anticipation. "Beginning final sequence," she announced, her fingers moving across the control panel. "Organic matter reconstruction at optimal levels. Cellular integrity holding steady." The chamber's contents began to shift from blue to clear as the restoration process accelerated. Within the liquid, a shape started to form. First a skeletal structure, then organs, and finally outer tissues. Maya held her breath as the final readings came in. "Neural patterns stabilizing," her assistant reported. "Consciousness matrix rebuilding according to extracted templates. It's working, Dr. Singh. It's actually working." The figure in the chamber was now fully formed, a young scholar from the Centauri colonies who had been one of the first victims of the hydro weapons. As the liquid drained away, medical teams stood ready with support equipment. "Life signs are strong," Maya noted, watching the vital sign displays carefully. "Beginning emergency wake-up sequence." The chamber's front panel slid open with a soft hiss. The restored scholar took their first breath, eyes fluttering open to reveal their characteristic crystalline irises. Maya stepped forward, medical scanner in hand. "Welcome back," she said softly. "You're safe. You're in a restoration facility on Earth." The scholar blinked, their crystalline features catching the light. I remember the blue wave. Everything went dark, but I could still think, still feel. I was aware but couldn't move, couldn't speak. Maya nodded, making notes as various medical devices confirmed the scholar's vital signs were stabilizing. "The weapon suspended you in a specialized solution, but you're back now." The restoration process was successful. The scholar attempted to sit up, assisted by the medical team. Their movements were tentative at first, but grew stronger with each passing moment. How did you manage this?" "We turned the weapon's greatest strength into its weakness," Maya explained. "The same suspension matrix that trapped you also preserved you perfectly. Once we figured out how to process the solution," she gestured to the banks of filtration equipment that lined the walls, "we simply had to reverse the process." A commotion at the back of the room drew their attention. A group of crystalline beings had pushed their way forward. The scholar's family, who had been waiting months for this moment. Maya stepped back, allowing them space for their reunion. "Dr. Singh," her assistant whispered urgently. "The data from this restoration. It's better than we hoped. The neural pattern preservation is nearly perfect. We can scale this up immediately." Maya watched the joyful reunion as she considered the implications. The restoration chamber was just a prototype, but with these results, they could begin mass production immediately. The Pacific Solution and Breaking Wave had already collected enough suspended organic matter to restore thousands. "Begin preparations for mass restoration," she ordered. "Contact the fleet. Tell them to bring everything they've collected to the restoration facilities. It's time to bring everyone back." As her team rushed to comply, Maya looked back at the scholar, now surrounded by their family. From one small sip of weaponized water by a curious human, they had developed a way to save countless lives. Her tablet chimed with an incoming message. The Breaking Wave had just completed another successful operation, collecting suspended organic matter from 3 more worlds. Soon, scenes like this would be playing out across multiple restoration facilities. "Doctor," the scholar called out, their voice stronger now. "My people, there were others with me when the wave hit. Can you?" Maya smiled. "We'll restore everyone," she promised. "Every single person taken by the blue tide will get a second chance." She turned to her team, determination evident in her voice. "Prepare the remaining restoration chambers. We have more lives to save." The room buzzed with renewed energy as technicians and medical staff moved with purpose. What had started as humanity's unique ability to process complex water had evolved into something far more important. A way to undo the damage caused by the hydro weapons, one person at a time. Maya looked at the restored scholar once more before heading to oversee the preparation of the next chambers. The war wasn't over yet, but for the first time, they were doing more than just stopping the weapons. They were reversing their effects entirely. The Earth ship-breaking wave hung in high orbit above the crystalline spires of the Zexathrax homeworld. Captain Michael Chen stood at the viewport, watching the swirling clouds below. Behind him, the bridge crew maintained a respectful silence as they awaited the response to their unusual message. "Still no reply from the surface?" he asked. Lieutenant Park shook her head. "Nothing yet, sir. Though their defense grid remains inactive, they're at least willing to listen." Michael nodded, his eyes fixed on the cargo they had brought. Thousands of small, glowing spheres floating in formation between the breaking wave and the planet below. Each contained a sample of pure water from Earth, glacier melt, deep seawater, hot springs, and mountain streams. "New contact," Park announced suddenly. "A ship is launching from the surface." The vessel that rose through the atmosphere was unlike any Zexathrax ship they had seen before. Instead of the usual angular warship design, this one was curved, almost organic in appearance. It took up position directly across from the breaking wave, close enough for Michael to see details of its crystalline hull. "We're receiving a transmission," Communications Officer John reported. "It's different from their usual protocols." The main screen lit up to show not a military commander, but a Zexthrax scientist. Her segmented eyes studied them with what Michael had learned to recognize as curiosity rather than hostility. "You bring water as a peace offering," she said, her translator converting the clicks and whistles of her native speech. "Explain." Michael gestured, and one of the glowing spheres drifted forward. "This sample comes from an underground spring near Earth's magnetic poles. The mineral content is remarkably similar to what you use in your weapons, though the natural version has some interesting variations." The scientist's mandibles moved in what might have been surprise. "You found the source." "We did," Michael confirmed. "Your weapons weren't invented. They were discovered. You found the formula in deep-sea vents on your world, didn't you? Just like the ones we have on Earth." The scientist was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her tone had changed. "Our ancestors found the liquid that could suspend life. They saw it as power, a way to preserve or destroy at will. We never imagined that another species would evolve drinking something similar." Michael smiled. "Earth's waters taught us many things. How to adapt, how to survive, but most importantly—" He gestured again, and more spheres drifted forward, each glowing with a different shade of blue. "How to learn from what tried to kill us." The Zexthrax scientist moved closer to her viewport, studying the spheres. "These are all naturally occurring. Everyone. We've spent our history learning to process them, to filter them, to make them safe. The same principles that let us drink from volcanic springs let us process your weapons and restore their victims." "The restorations," she clicked rapidly. "Our sensors showed success rates we thought impossible." Michael nodded to Zhang, who transmitted a data packet. "Complete technical specifications of our filtration and restoration technology. We're offering an exchange. Your research into suspension matrices for ours into restoration processes." The scientist's compound eyes flickered as she processed this. "You would share this freely, after what we—" "Water shapes everything it touches," Michael said, recalling something Dr. Singh had told him. "On Earth, it carved our deepest valleys and highest mountains, but it also taught us that the same force that can destroy can also create, can preserve, can restore. The choice is in how we use it." The scientist turned away, conferring with others off-screen. When she faced them again, her posture had changed subtly. "The High Council has authorized me to accept your offer. We would like to learn about water as you understand it." Michael smiled as the sphere of polar spring water drifted to the Zexthrax ship's collection port. "Then let's begin with the basics. Every source of water tells a story. You just have to learn how to listen." As the two ships hummed against the backdrop of stars, the remaining spheres created a bridge of light between them. The Hydra weapons would be dismantled, their technology repurposed for preservation and restoration. The blue tide that had once threatened the galaxy would become a force for renewal. Humanity's greatest survival trait had led them to this moment. Not just their ability to drink what others feared, but their capacity to transform that knowledge into understanding. The war ended not with a grand battle, but with an exchange of water and wisdom, proving that sometimes the greatest victories come not from fighting our enemies, but from teaching them to see the world through different eyes.